Hello there! So if you're growing anything that loves the heat, things like watermelons or pumpkins, you know they soak up the sun. But what happens when that heat becomes just a little too much, especially for your brand new plants? Well, today, we're going to dive into some real agronomist secrets for turning a risky start into a sure thing, even when it's bone dry out there. Let's get right into it.
It's a fantastic question, right? I mean, we think of watermelons as these tough, sun-worshipping plants, and they are, eventually. But when they're just starting out as a little seed or a fragile seedling, that intense heat can be an absolute killer. Their big, powerful root systems just haven't had a chance to develop yet. So how do we help them get through that tough phase?
And here's the thing, the crucial point, really. It's not the sun itself that's the main enemy. The real challenge is the lack of steady, consistent moisture right there in the soil during that critical early growth. This is when the plant is working its hardest to establish its roots. Without a reliable water source exactly where it's needed, that seed might not even sprout, or a new seedling could just wither away.
And that brings us to the solution, a pretty amazing technology called a superabsorbent. What we're talking about are these tiny little granules that basically act like sponges. You mix them into the soil and they just soak up hundreds of times their own weight in water. This creates a little personal reservoir of moisture right there at the root zone, protecting the plant from drought from day one.
The easiest way to picture it is this. Imagine giving every single one of your seeds or seedlings its own little personal canteen of water. It's not about flooding an entire field. It's a super targeted microhydration system that keeps the plant from getting stressed. Honestly, this simple idea can completely change your results.
So how do we actually put this to work? Let's kick things off with the first method, which is sowing your seeds directly into the ground. This one's for anybody planting watermelons, melons, or squash right out in the field where they're going to spend their lives.
Now, the key here is precision. You really don't need a lot, just 1 gram. A single gram of these dry superabsorbent granules for each planting hole is all it takes. That tiny little amount is enough to create the water reservoir that's going to support that seed all the way through germination and early rooting.
And the process itself, it's brilliantly simple. First, you just make your planting hole like you always would. Second, drop in that 1 gram of dry granules. Third, place your seed right on top of them. And finally, just cover it all up with soil and give it a gentle little press. That's it. You've just given that seed an incredible head start.
Oh, and this isn't just a trick for small gardens. For any large-scale operations out there, this process is just as easy. The granules can be loaded right into a standard seeder and applied at the very same time as the seeds, which makes it incredibly efficient for commercial farmers.
Okay, on to our second method. What if you're not starting with seeds out in the field, but you've got these delicate little seedlings you started in a greenhouse? Well, transplanting is one of the most stressful moments in a plant's life, and this is where our technique really shines.
With seedlings, we're going to use the same superabsorbent technology, but we're going to use it in a different form, as a protective gel. This becomes our secret weapon. It coats those fragile little roots, shielding them from drying out during transport and pretty much eliminating the shock of being moved to a new home.
And making this gel, it couldn't be easier. You just take 1 liter of water. While you're stirring, you gradually add about 5 to 7 grams of the granules. Then, you just wait. In about 10 or 15 minutes, you'll see it transform into this thick, water-rich gel all ready to go protect your plants.
The difference this makes is, well, it's night and day. Without the gel, a seedling's roots are exposed to the air. They can dry out in just a few minutes, leading to transplant shock and a really high failure rate. But with the gel, those roots are completely encased in a bubble of moisture, which ensures they arrive at their new spot healthy, protected, and ready to grow.
So, let's put it all together. First, gently take out your seedling. Second, dip its entire root ball into that protective gel we made. Make sure it's fully coated. Now here comes the 1-2 punch. In the new planting hole, you're going to add 1 gram of the dry granules, just like we did with the seeds. Finally, place your gel-coated seedling right into that hole. This gives it both immediate protection and a long-term water supply.
By combining these simple, really precise techniques, you're not just crossing your fingers and hoping for a good harvest. You're actively working to guarantee it. You're tackling the single biggest point of failure for young plants, head on.
So what are the big takeaways here? Well, you're directly protecting your plants from drought stress. You're making sure their roots get established quickly and strongly. You can move your seedlings around without being terrified of them drying out. To put it simply, you're giving every single plant the absolute best, strongest start in life you possibly can.
Look, the most important thing to remember is this.
This entire strategy is about providing that necessary moisture right when the plant is most vulnerable. By giving it targeted support during that critical moment, you get a simple, efficient, and incredibly effective result.
So the next time you're looking at a packet of seeds or a tray full of seedlings, the question isn't really whether the weather is going to cooperate. The real question is, are you ready to give your plants their absolute best chance to thrive no matter what the season decides to throw at you?